The holographic display flickered with data that made Ambassador Helen Ross's stomach turn. 3 months of deep space probe readings, all pointing to the same impossible conclusion. Something massive was coming from the void between galaxies, and it would arrive in less than a year. She walked through the curved corridors of Station Unity, humanity's embassy among the stars. Around her, dozens of alien species went about their daily business. The Aldari with their crystalline skin, the Corvin with their multiple arms, the Thren who floated rather than walked. All of them lived in a galaxy that had known peace for 10,000 years. None of them wanted to hear what she had to say. The council chamber doors opened with a soft hiss. Helen stepped inside, her simple gray suit a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by the other delegates. High Chancellor Drell sat at the center of the curved table, his 6 eyes regarding her with barely concealed contempt. The tall, insectoid leader had made his opinions about humanity quite clear during previous sessions. Ambassador Ross, Drell's translator, rendered his clicking speech into flat, emotionless words. We understand you have requested this emergency session. The Council is very busy with important matters. Helen placed her data tablet on the podium. The holographic projector sprang to life, filling the chamber with three-dimensional star charts. Red markers indicated the threat's projected path. 3 months ago, our Deep Space Monitoring Network detected unusual energy signatures in Sector 447, Helen began. We investigated and found a fleet. Not a small fleet, not a large fleet. A fleet that spans 3 light-years across. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several delegates leaned forward. The ships match no known configuration in our databases or yours, Helen continued. Our analysis suggests they are automated war machines, possibly millions of years old. They're following a search pattern, systematically sweeping through the galaxy. Whatever programmed them is long dead, but their mission continues. They will reach inhabited space in 11 months. Drell made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. Ambassador, humanity has been a spacefaring species for barely 200 years. Do you truly expect us to believe that your primitive sensors detected something our civilizations missed for millennia? Your civilization stopped looking, Helen said quietly. You've had peace for so long you stopped watching the dark spaces. We haven't. Earth's history taught us to always scan the horizon. A Corvin delegate raised 3 of her arms. Even if we accepted this claim, how do you know these machines are hostile? Helen tapped her tablet. The display changed, showing recordings from a probe that had gotten too close. The ancient ships had responded instantly, reducing the probe to atoms in seconds. They fire on anything that approaches, Helen said. Our probes detected weapon signatures that dwarf anything currently in use. One of their smaller vessels could likely destroy a modern dreadnought. Speculation, Drell said dismissively. You come here with blurry images and ask us to mobilize our resources based on human paranoia. Your species sees threats everywhere because you come from a savage world. You've been fighting each other for your entire history. Now you project that violence onto the cosmos. Helen felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice level. We're offering you our complete data. Send your own ships to verify. We'll provide coordinates. We will not waste resources chasing phantoms, Drell said. He looked around the chamber. Does anyone else wish to comment on this matter? Secretary Now, a smaller delegate who rarely spoke, shifted in his seat. He seemed about to say something, then stopped, looking at Drell's stern expression. Silence filled the chamber. Then this session is concluded, Drell announced. Ambassador Ross, the Council appreciates your concern, but we must focus on real issues, not imagined threats from the void. The other delegates began filing out. Helen stood at the podium, watching them leave. 10,000 years of peace had made them soft. They couldn't imagine their galaxy under attack because it had never happened in their recorded history. She gathered her materials and walked toward the exit. Secretary Nal appeared beside her in the corridor outside. "Ambassador," he said softly, glancing around to make sure they were alone, "I believe you." Helen stopped. "Then why didn't you say something?" "Because it would accomplish nothing except ending my career," Nal admitted. "Drell controls the council. The other species follow his lead. They won't act unless they see the threat with their own eyes." "By then it will be too late to prepare adequate defenses," Helen said. "I know," Nal's translator conveyed genuine sadness. "What will humanity do?" Helen looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere in that darkness, an ancient fleet was approaching. The galaxy might not believe the threat was real, but that wouldn't stop it from arriving. "We'll do what we've always done," she said. "We'll prepare. We'll build defenses. We'll ready our ships and train our people. Alone, if we have to." Nal touched her arm briefly, the gesture awkward but sincere. "I hope you're wrong about this threat, but if you're right, I hope humanity's preparations are enough." Helen watched him walk away, then returned to her quarters. She immediately opened a secure channel to Earth. Admiral Richard Hayes appeared on the screen, his weathered face grim. "They didn't listen," he said. "It wasn't a question." "No, sir, they think we're being paranoid." Hayes nodded slowly. "Then we proceed with Plan B. I'm calling an emergency session with the world governments. We'll begin construction immediately." "Sir, building a fleet large enough to matter will strain our entire economy. The civilian sector will suffer, and if we're wrong, we'll have wasted years of resources." "And if we're right?" Hayes asked. Helen thought about the holographic displays, the ancient ships moving through the void with patient, mechanical determination. She thought about the peaceful species who wouldn't prepare, who couldn't imagine their galaxy at war. "If we're right, we'll be the only thing standing between those machines and billions of innocent lives," she said. "Then we'd better build a lot of ships," Hayes said. "Get back here, Ambassador. We have work to do." The transmission ended. Helen looked out at Station Unity one last time. The beautiful, peaceful hub where species gathered to discuss art and trade and philosophy. They had no idea what was coming. But humanity knew, and humanity would be ready, even if they had to stand alone. 6 months had passed since the Council rejected humanity's warning. In shipyards across the solar system, the sound of construction never stopped. Welding torches blazed day and night as workers assembled hull sections for warships humanity had never thought it would need. Commander Petra Wells floated in zero gravity near the construction dock above Mars. Before her, the skeleton of a new destroyer took shape. The USNS Defiant, named for humanity's refusal to back down from the coming storm. 300 meters of weapons, armor, and engines designed for one purpose: war. "How long until she's ready?" asked the foreman beside her, his magnetic boots keeping him anchored to the platform. 4 weeks if the crews maintain current pace," Petra said, checking her tablet. "We've cut construction time by 40%, but quality control is holding." "The Council won't like this. We're building 30 ships in this yard alone." Petra's expression hardened. "The Council doesn't get a vote." She pushed off toward the next section, her practiced movements taking her through the scaffolding. Below, hundreds of workers in pressure suits moved like ants, each focused on their small part of a much larger picture. Humanity had united in a way that surprised even their own historians. Every nation, every corporation, every person understood what was at stake. On Earth, Admiral Hayes reviewed reports in the command center buried beneath Geneva. Numbers scrolled across multiple screens: ship construction, weapons production, personnel training, resource allocation. The logistics of preparing for galactic war would have been impossible just a few years ago, but necessity had driven innovation. "Sir, another message from the Council," an aide said, handing him a tablet. Hayes scanned the official communication. More threats, more condemnation. The Council had noticed humanity's military buildup and responded with economic sanctions, trade restrictions, travel limitations. They called humanity dangerous, a threat to galactic stability. They still don't believe. Hayes muttered. Sir, there's something else. The aide pulled up another file. Our monitoring stations detected 3 Council scout ships near the Jupiter waypoint. They appeared to be conducting surveillance on our shipyards. Let them look, Hayes said. Maybe if they see what we're building, they'll finally understand we're serious. But he knew better. The Council saw warships and assumed aggression. They couldn't imagine that humanity was building a shield, not a sword. Meanwhile, Helen Ross made her 20th attempt to warn individual species leaders. She sat in a conference room with Ambassador Trell, representative of the Aldari people. The crystalline being regarded her with what might have been sympathy. I believe your evidence is compelling, Trell said carefully, but I cannot bring this to my government. The Council has made its position clear. Any species that supports humanity's claims will face political isolation. So you'll do nothing? Helen asked, fighting to keep frustration from her voice. I will ensure my people are prepared for evacuation if necessary, Trell said. That is all I can offer. After Trell left, Helen remained in the empty conference room. Her personal communicator buzzed with a secure message from Secretary Now. She opened it and felt her blood run cold. The Council was considering military action, a coalition fleet to force human disarmament. The proposal would be voted on in 3 weeks. Helen immediately contacted Hayes. They're planning to attack us, Hayes said, disbelief and anger mixing in his voice. They see our buildup as preparation for conquest, Helen explained. They think we're using the threat story as cover for expansion. Hayes slammed his fist on the desk. We're trying to save their lives and they want to destroy our defenses. What do we do? Helen asked. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. We finish the fleet. Faster. If they come, we'll have to defend ourselves and prepare for the real threat simultaneously. That's impossible. So was everything else we've accomplished in the last 6 months. Construction accelerated. Workers pulled double shifts. Factories ran beyond safe capacity. David Reed, newly promoted to captain of the Defiant, watched his crew run training exercises with grim determination. They were good, but they weren't ready. None of them were. They were preparing for 2 wars and hoping they could avoid at least one. On Earth, civilian populations received regular briefings about the situation. Protests erupted in some cities, people demanding their government stand down and accept the Council's terms. But most understood. The evidence was public now. Anyone could access the probe data, could see the approaching fleet of ancient machines. And the countdown continued. 7 months until the machines arrived. 3 weeks until the Council vote on military intervention. Petra Wells stood in the command center of the completed Defiant, running system checks. Every station reported green. The ship was ready. Outside, 29 sister ships floated in formation, with more completing construction every week. David Reed joined her on the bridge, his new captain's insignia still unfamiliar on his uniform. Admiral Hayes wants us to run combat drills against the new simulator, he said. It's programmed with our best guess at the ancient machine's capabilities. How bad is it? Petra asked. Every simulation ends with us taking heavy losses, David admitted. Even if everything goes perfectly, we lose ships, a lot of ships. Petra nodded slowly. She'd seen the same projections, but we still win. If we do everything right, yes, barely. Then we'll do everything right. David moved to the captain's chair, settling into it with visible discomfort. Command had never been his goal. He'd been a pilot, then a tactical officer. But the crisis demanded everyone step up. Do you think the Council will actually attack us? He asked. I don't know, Petra said. But if they do, we'll have to hold back enough to defend against the real threat. That means not using our full strength. Fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. While the galaxy watches and judges us. They stood together on the bridge, surrounded by new technology built in desperate haste. Outside, stars twinkled peacefully, revealing nothing of the storm approaching through the dark. The council vote was in 2 weeks. The ancient machines would arrive in 6.5 months, and humanity could only prepare and hope their warnings would finally be heard before it was too late. But preparation wasn't hope, preparation was action, and humans had always been good at action. The alarm didn't sound like David expected. Instead of a blaring siren, it was a simple 3-tone chime that meant everything humanity feared had arrived. "Contact confirmed," the sensor officer reported, her voice admirably steady. "Multiple signatures emerging from dark space, Sector 447. Distance, 3 light-years and closing. Configuration matches the probe data exactly." David stood from his chair on the Defiance Bridge and moved to the holographic display. The ancient fleet appeared as a cloud of red dots, so numerous they blurred together. Behind him, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. "Get me Admiral Hayes," David ordered. The Admiral's face appeared on screen within seconds. Behind him, the Earth Command Center buzzed with activity. "How many?" Hayes asked without preamble. "Sensors are still counting," David said. "Current estimate, 17,000 individual vessels. Size range from frigate class to something our computers are calling a planetary siege platform." Hayes's expression didn't change, but David saw him grip the edge of his console. "Estimated time to nearest inhabited world." 4 days at their current speed, the navigator called out. "They're heading directly for Aldara Prime." Aldara Prime, home to 3 billion peaceful Aldari people, a species without military ships, without weapons, without any concept of defense because they'd never needed it. "I'm contacting the Council," Hayes said. "Get your fleet to battle stations and prepare for jump to Aldara Prime." "Sir, the Council will accuse us of provocation if we move our fleet without authorization." "I don't care," Hayes said flatly. "People are about to die. Move your ships, Captain." The transmission ended. David turned to his crew. "All ships, battle stations. Prepare for combat jump to Aldara Prime. We launch in 30 minutes." The fleet came alive. 300 ships, humanity's entire deep space navy, began spinning up their jump drives. It wasn't enough. Not against 17,000 ancient war machines, but it was what they had. Meanwhile, Helen Ross burst into the council chamber without waiting for permission. High Chancellor Drell rose from his seat, all 6 eyes narrowing. "This session is closed to observers," he began. "They're here," Helen interrupted, her voice cutting through the chamber. "The fleet I warned you about. They emerged from dark space 20 minutes ago. They're heading for Aldara Prime." Silence. Then Ambassador Trell stood, her crystalline form catching the light. "That's impossible," Trell said, but her voice shook. "Aldara Prime is my homeworld. You must be mistaken." Helen activated her data pad, throwing the sensor readings onto the chamber's main display. The entire council watched as the red dots advanced across the star chart. Drell stared at the display, his composed demeanor cracking. This could be fabricated. Humanity could have staged this to justify their military buildup. "Then send your own ships to verify," Helen said. "You have 4 days before those machines reach Aldara Prime. 4 days to evacuate 3 billion people or mount a defense." "The Council has no military," Drell said, and for the first time Helen heard uncertainty in his voice. "We disbanded our defense forces 3,000 years ago." "I know," Helen said quietly, "but humanity does have a military. Right now, our fleet is preparing to jump to Aldara Prime. We're going to try to hold them off." Trell moved toward Helen, her crystalline hands trembling. You would defend my people after we refused to help you. We didn't build this fleet to watch people die, Helen said, even people who didn't believe us. 4 days later, the ancient machines arrived at Aldara Prime. The planet hung in space, beautiful and defenseless. Cities covered the surface, glittering in the light of the system's twin suns. Orbital platforms held millions more Aldari going about their daily lives. None of them were prepared for war. The ancient fleet emerged from jump space like a storm. Thousands of ships, each one massive and dark, arranged in perfect geometric formations. They moved with synchronized precision that no living fleet could match. David watched from the Defiance Bridge as humanity's 300 ships positioned themselves between the machines and Aldara Prime. "We're outnumbered 50-1, Petra Wells said from her tactical station. "No way we can stop them all." "We don't have to stop them all," David said. "We just have to slow them down long enough to evacuate the civilians." He opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Defiant. We hold the line here, no matter what, for Earth and for everyone we protect." The ancient machines didn't respond to hails. They simply opened fire. The battle was chaos. Energy beams lanced through space, hitting shields and armor with devastating force. Human ships returned fire, their weapons tearing into the ancient hulls. The machines were powerful, but they followed predictable attack patterns. Humanity's tactical advantage came from unpredictability. Petra coordinated the fighter squadrons, sending them in aggressive runs that confused the machines' targeting systems. Human pilots flew like their trainers had thought impossible, using maneuvers that would kill anyone who hesitated. The USNS Vigilant took a direct hit amidships, her shields collapsing. Captain Miranda Chen kept her ship in formation, firing until her reactor went critical. She aimed her dying ship at an ancient dreadnought and punched the engines to maximum. "For Earth," were her last words before the impact turned both ships into expanding clouds of debris. 12 human ships died in the first hour. The ancient fleet lost 30, but they had thousands more. David's tactical display showed the math clearly. Humanity was losing. But they were buying time. Below them, Aldara Prime's orbital platforms began launching evacuation ships. Millions of Aldari civilians fled toward the outer system, where jump-capable transports waited. Secretary Nal had organized the evacuation, somehow cutting through council bureaucracy to save lives. "Sir, the machines are breaking through on the eastern flank," Petra reported. "They're heading for the civilian platforms." David didn't hesitate. "Defiant and 3rd Squadron with me, we stopped that breakthrough." The Defiant surged forward, her engines burning at maximum. Around her, 20 other ships followed their captain into what might be their last battle. Because that's what humans did. They stood between the innocent and the dark, even when the galaxy had called them primitive, even when no one had believed their warnings. They fought anyway. 3 weeks into the war, and human ships were spread across 7 star systems. Every inhabited world that faced the ancient threat now had Earth's vessels in orbit. Petra Wells ran combat operations from a command carrier that jumped from system to system, never sleeping more than 4 hours at a stretch. Her tactical board showed the grim reality. Green dots for human ships, red for ancient machines, blue for civilian populations. The red dots always outnumbered the green by factors of 10 or more, but the green dots kept fighting. "Status report from the Aldara system," her communications officer said. "All civilian populations successfully evacuated. Human casualties, 18 ships destroyed, 34 damaged beyond field repair." 18 ships. Thousands of human lives lost protecting aliens who'd mocked them months ago. Petra entered the data into her log without emotion. There would be time for grief later. Right now, she had a war to coordinate. Admiral Hayes had pulled ships from Earth's own defenses to protect Council worlds. The solar system sat vulnerable, defended by a skeleton force and orbital weapons platforms. If the machines changed course toward Earth, humanity's homeworld would burn. But Hayes had made the calculation. If they couldn't stop the machines here, it wouldn't matter if Earth had defenses or not. Everything would fall. David Reed guided the battered Defiant into dock above the planet Corvin 4. His ship needed repairs that would take weeks they didn't have. Hull breaches patched with temporary seals. Weapons systems running at 60% capacity. The crew moved like ghosts, exhausted beyond anything training had prepared them for. "Captain, you should see this," his first officer said, pointing to the viewport. Below them, Corvin 4's surface glittered with cities. In orbit, hundreds of civilian stations housed billions more. Not a single defensive platform, not one armed ship. The Corvin had lived in peace for so long they'd forgotten how to fight. And now 30 human ships orbited their world, the only thing between them and extinction. A small Corvin shuttle approached the Defiant. David watched it dock, then went to meet their visitor. The Corvin delegate who emerged had 4 arms and skin that shifted through different colors. She seemed overwhelmed by the military ship around her. "Captain Reed," she said through a translator, "I am Minister Vara. I come to express my people's gratitude." David nodded tiredly. "You're welcome, Minister. We need to discuss evacuation procedures in case the machines break through our lines." "We have prepared as you instructed," Vara said. "But I must ask, why do you do this? We did not believe your warnings. We called your people warlike and dangerous. We voted for sanctions against you, yet you defend us anyway." David was quiet for a moment. "Because you need defending, that's reason enough. But your people are dying. I have seen the casualty reports you transmitted to Earth. Thousands dead for us, for species that doubted you." "Would you prefer we abandoned you?" David asked, not unkindly. "No, I just don't understand." David gestured toward the viewport at the planet below. "My grandmother told me a story when I was young, about a man who saw someone drowning in a river. The man jumped in to save them. After, someone asked why he risked his life for a stranger. He said, because they needed saving. That's all the reason he needed." Vara's colors shifted to something that might have been understanding. "Earth's rivers must have taught your people many lessons. More than you know." Meanwhile, the council chamber on Station Unity had transformed from a place of peaceful debate to a crisis command center. High Chancellor Drell stood before the strategic display, watching human ships fight across a dozen systems simultaneously. Secretary Now worked beside him, coordinating what little support the council species could provide. "The humans have lost another carrier group in Sector 9, Now reported quietly. 15 ships. They held long enough for civilian evacuation, but the cost was severe." Drell's 6 eyes focused on the display. 3 weeks ago he'd stood in the same chamber and laughed at humanity's warnings. Now he watched humans die defending worlds he was supposed to protect. "How many of our people have they saved?" Drell asked. "Current estimate, 42 billion evacuated successfully from threatened worlds. Without the human fleet, losses would have been catastrophic." "And we called them primitive," Drell said quietly. "We called them warlike. We were going to force their disarmament." "They knew we were planning it," Now said. "I warned Ambassador Ross. They prepared anyway, despite knowing the council might turn against them." A priority message came through from the Aldara front. Ambassador Trell's face appeared on the display, her crystalline form dimmer than usual, dulled by exhaustion and grief. "High Chancellor," she said, "I am transmitting from a refugee transport. My homeworld is saved. 3 billion of my people live because humans stood between us and oblivion. But I watched 18 human ships die protecting us, 18 crews who will never go home." Trell's image wavered. "I spoke with one of the human captains before the final battle. I asked why they fought for people who didn't believe them. She said, Because someone has to. And then she flew her damaged ship directly into an ancient dreadnought to save my people's evacuation transports. The transmission ended. Drell stood in silence, watching the tactical display update with new reports. More human ships damaged, more crews lost, all of them dying to protect a galaxy that had mocked their warnings. "What can we do?" Drell asked. "Our species have no military, no weapons, no training." "We can help in other ways," Nal said. "Food, medical supplies, repair materials. We can convert our civilian ships to support vessels. We can process refugees so human forces can focus on fighting." Drell straightened. "Make it happen. Contact every council species. Tell them the humans are bleeding for us. The least we can do is support them." Across the galaxy, something shifted. Species that had condemned humanity's military buildup now scrambled to help. Factories converted to produce supplies. Civilian volunteers organized aid convoys. Young aliens asked how they could join the fight. The galaxy was finally waking up. On the Defiance Bridge, David received a transmission from Admiral Hayes. "Captain, we've got reinforcements arriving from Earth. 20 new ships, fresh crews. But that's all we can spare. Home defense is already below minimum safe levels." "Understood, sir," David said. Hayes leaned closer to the camera. "David, you need to know. If this goes wrong, if the machines break through, Earth won't be able to stop them. We're all in." "Then we'd better not let them break through, sir." "Make sure you don't." Petra Wells studied the tactical data for the 100th time, searching for something everyone else had missed. 6 weeks of defensive battles had taught humanity how the ancient machines operated. They moved in perfect coordination, responded to threats with calculated efficiency, and never made mistakes. But that coordination had to come from somewhere. "There," she said, pointing to a pattern in the fleet movements. "Look at the command lag. Every time the main concentration shifts, there's a 2.3-second delay before the outer groups adjust. That's not light-speed communication delay. That's processing time." Her tactical officer leaned closer to the display. "You think there's a central command ship?" "I think there has to be. 17,000 ships don't move in perfect formation without something coordinating them. We've been treating this like fighting 17,000 separate enemies, but it's really one mind controlling 17,000 bodies." She pulled up long-range scans of the ancient fleet's main concentration. Somewhere in that mass of ships, hidden among thousands of identical vessels, was the brain directing them all. "If we take out the command ship, what happens to the rest?" her officer asked. "Best case, they become uncoordinated, still dangerous but no longer working as one unit. Worst case, nothing changes and we waste our only shot at a decisive strike." "Those aren't great odds." "No," Petra agreed, "but they're better than what we have now." She transmitted her findings to Admiral Hayes and Captain Reed. Within hours, the three of them stood in a virtual conference room, their holograms meeting while their physical bodies remained on separate ships light-years apart. "The command ship will be in the center of their main fleet concentration," David said, studying the projected formation. "That's 3,000 ancient vessels in a defensive sphere. Getting through that is suicide." "It's suicide if we do nothing too," Hayes said. "Just slower. We're losing ships faster than Earth can replace them. In another month, we won't have enough force to protect the inhabited systems." "The Council species are contributing now," Petra noted. "They're offering ships." "Civilian transports with welded-on guns," David said bluntly. "Good people with no training. We'd be sending them to die." Hayes was quiet for a moment. "What if we weren't? What if we used those ships as a diversionary force? Draw off part of the ancient fleet while our combat vessels punch through to the command ship." "You're talking about using civilians as bait," David said. "I'm talking about using volunteers who want to help," Hayes corrected. Every species in the council has people who want to fight. They understand the stakes now. Give them a role that matters. The plan came together over the next 2 weeks. Council species contributed every ship they could spare, from massive cargo haulers to small personal craft. Secretary now helped organize the volunteer fleet, screening out anyone without proper training or who didn't understand the risks. To everyone's surprise, Nal himself volunteered to command the diversionary force. "You're a bureaucrat, not a soldier," Helen Ross protested when she heard. "I was a bureaucrat who did nothing while humans died defending my galaxy," Nal said quietly. "I can't fight like they do, but I can do this. Give me a purpose, Ambassador." The combined fleet assembled in neutral space. 300 human warships formed the core strike force. 800 council vessels of every description made up the diversionary fleet. It was the largest gathering of ships in galactic history, united against a common threat. High Chancellor Drell addressed the combined force via transmission. The arrogant leader who'd mocked humanity months ago spoke with humility now. "To the humans who warned us and we did not listen," Drell said. "To the humans who defended us when we deserved no defense. To the humans who are about to lead us into battle, we stand with you now. Forgive us for not standing sooner." David stood on the Defiance Bridge, looking at the assembled fleet. Beside him, a young Aldari officer worked the communications station. She was one of hundreds of aliens who'd volunteered to serve alongside humans, learning combat operations in the middle of a war. "All ships report ready, sir," she said. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice stayed steady. "Thank you, Officer Shella," David said gently. "You're doing well." The fleet jumped together, emerging in the dead system where the ancient fleet's main concentration waited. Immediately, thousands of red contacts appeared on the tactical display. "Diversionary fleet, begin your attack run," David ordered. Nal's voice came over the channel. "For the galaxy, for humanity who showed us how to fight." The Council fleet charged forward, 800 ships against 3,000 ancient war machines. They fired their improvised weapons and scattered in random patterns, drawing the machines' attention. It was chaos and desperation, but it worked. A third of the ancient fleet broke formation to pursue the scattered attackers. "Strike force with me," David commanded. "We punch through while they're distracted." The human fleet accelerated to combat speed, driving toward the heart of the ancient formation. Energy beams crisscrossed space. Ships exploded into flame. The Defiant shuddered as a blast hit her shields, but David kept her on course. Petra coordinated the fighter squadrons, guiding them through gaps in the enemy formation. Human pilots flew with reckless precision, accepting insane risks to open a path. The USNS Resolution took critical damage and fell behind. Her captain ordered evacuation, then rammed her ship into an ancient cruiser that blocked the strike force's path. Both ships vanished in a flash of released energy. "Command ship ahead," the sensor officer called out. "Distance 50,000 kilometers." David could see it now on the main display. Larger than the others, covered in antenna arrays and power conduits. The brain of the ancient fleet. "All ships concentrate fire," David ordered. "Everything we have." 300 human warships opened fire simultaneously. The ancient command ship's shields flared brilliant white, then overloaded. Weapons fire tore into the hull, ripping through ancient armor. Secondary explosions rippled across its surface. The command ship tried to jump away, but Petra had anticipated that. Her fighter squadrons had already disabled its engines. "Finish it," David said quietly. The Defiant's main guns fired one last time. The beam punched through the command ship's core, triggering a catastrophic reactor failure. The massive vessel tore itself apart from within. And across the battlefield, something changed. The ancient machines stopped moving in coordination. They scattered, each following individual programming without the guiding intelligence that had made them unstoppable. They were still dangerous, but no longer invincible. The human fleet pressed the attack, exploiting the confusion. Council ships rallied, seeing victory within reach for the first time. The tide had turned. The cleanup took 3 months. Human ships and their council allies hunted down scattered ancient machines across 20 systems. Without their command ship, the machines fell back on basic programming, making them predictable and vulnerable. One by one, they were destroyed. David Reed watched the final machine die from the repaired bridge of the Defiant. The ancient ship tumbled through space, trailing debris and atmosphere before its reactor went critical. One more flash of light, then nothing. "That's the last one, sir," his tactical officer reported. "All ancient vessels confirmed destroyed." David nodded slowly. "Send the all-clear signal. War's over." But even as he said it, he knew that wasn't quite true. The fighting was done, but the consequences would echo for generations. On Earth, memorial services filled the parks and squares of every major city. 30,000 names were read aloud, human crews who died defending a galaxy that hadn't believed them. Families gathered to remember sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, friends and lovers who'd gone to war and never came home. Helen Ross attended as many services as she could, though each one tore at her heart. She'd known what was coming and pushed for humanity to prepare. Sometimes she wondered if that made their deaths her responsibility. Admiral Hayes found her at the memorial wall in Geneva, where the names of the fallen were carved into black stone. 30,000 names. It would take hours to read them all. "You didn't kill them," Hayes said quietly, somehow knowing what she was thinking. "You tried to save everyone. We all knew the cost when we started building the fleet." "Does that make it easier?" Helen asked. "No, but it makes it meaningful. They died protecting billions of people who are alive because of their sacrifice." On Station Unity, the council chamber had been transformed. Where once delegates sat in comfortable chairs debating trade policies, now stood a monument. Black stone carved with text in every galactic language, telling the story of humanity's warning and the Council's failure to listen. High Chancellor Drell stood before the monument as it was unveiled. His 6 eyes traced the words he'd helped compose. "We were warned and we did not listen. We were offered protection and called it aggression. We learned too late that peace maintained through ignorance is no peace at all. May we never forget the humans who died teaching us this lesson." Beside the monument stood statues. Captain Miranda Chen, who'd rammed her ship into an ancient dreadnought. Commander Lisa Park, who'd held the line at Aldara Prime until every civilian escaped. Lieutenant Nathan Brooks, whose fighter squadron had destroyed a machine ship that would have reached a refugee convoy. And dozens more. Heroes immortalized in stone so the galaxy would never forget. The council session that followed was unprecedented. Every delegate stood as Ambassador Helen Ross entered. The applause lasted 5 minutes. When it finally stopped, High Chancellor Drell addressed her directly. "Ambassador Ross, on behalf of the Galactic Council and all species represented here, I formally apologize for our failure to heed your warning. 30,000 humans died because of our arrogance. No words can repay that debt." Helen stood at the podium where she'd once presented evidence that no one believed. "The debt isn't owed to me, High Chancellor. It's owed to the families of those who died, to the human populations who sacrificed their economy and security to build a defense you refused to create. And it's owed to yourselves, because you nearly destroyed your own civilizations through willful blindness." The chamber was silent. But, Helen continued, her voice softening, "humanity didn't fight for payment or recognition. We fought because it was necessary, because people needed defending. That hasn't changed and never will." Drell nodded slowly. "Then let us ensure it never needs to happen again. The Council proposes the following changes to galactic governance. First, establishment of a permanent defense force, trained and equipped to respond to threats. Second, humanity to hold permanent position on the Council Security Committee with full authority over military matters. Third, creation of an early warning network using human monitoring technology. Fourth, mandatory defense preparedness for all member species. And Drell added, looking directly at Helen, "We propose that Ambassador Ross be appointed as the first high security advisor, with authority over all defensive operations." The proposal passed unanimously. David Reed attended the ceremony at Station Unity, where the new Galactic Defense Force was officially established. Young recruits from dozens of species stood in formation, wearing uniforms that combined elements from all member species. But the training program they'd complete was human-designed, built on lessons learned in blood. Petra Wells had accepted the position of Academy Commandant. She stood at the podium addressing the first class of cadets. "You stand here today because 30,000 humans died protecting people they'd never met," Petra said. "They fought not because it was easy, but because it was right. That's the standard you'll be held to. Not perfection, but purpose. Not fearlessness, but courage. The galaxy is counting on you to be ready for the next threat. Don't let them down." Later, David found Petra in the Academy's Memorial Garden, a quiet space where students could reflect on those who'd come before. "Strange, isn't it?" Petra said. "We spent our entire careers preparing to defend Earth. Now we're teaching the galaxy how to defend itself." "You think they'll remember?" David asked. "When the next generation takes over, when these events become history instead of memory?" "That's why we built the monuments," Petra said. "Why we tell the stories, so even if they forget the details, they remember the lesson." Which is that warnings matter, that preparation matters, that sometimes the species you don't trust, the ones you call primitive and dangerous, might be the ones who save you. David nodded, looking at the memorial stones surrounding them. "Do you think another threat will come?" "Probably," Petra said. "The universe is a big place, but next time the galaxy will be ready. They learned the hard way, but they learned." Secretary Nal approached them, his gait more confident than when Helen first met him. He'd been given a new position, Director of Threat Assessment. His job was to ensure no warning ever went unheeded again. "I wanted to thank you both," Nal said. "Not just for the battle, but for showing us who we'd become. We'd grown soft and arrogant. We needed to remember that peace isn't free." "It never is," David agreed, "but it's worth fighting for." Years would pass. The scars would heal. New ships would replace those lost. But humanity's role in the galaxy had fundamentally changed. They were no longer the new species, the primitives who'd barely reached the stars. They were the guardians, the ones who'd proven that sometimes the most important thing wasn't technology or culture or history. Sometimes it was just the courage to stand between the darkness and the light, even when no one believed the darkness was real. Earth's vigil continued, watching the stars for the next threat. But now they didn't watch alone. The galaxy had learned its lesson. When humanity gave a warning, the galaxy listened. Because they'd paid in blood to learn what happened when they didn't.